Hello guys, it's such a lovely day outside. I decided to do this digital learning from the comforts of my front porch. So everybody go to classroom.google.com. Everybody should be there right now because that's where you are watching this video from. On there, it says Chapter 29, Themes and Summary. So, secretly, we've used this whole year, but these are the first few times where I'm sending it to you guys so you can be aware of it. This usually takes the place of our chapter PowerPoint. So there's 4 themes to this chapter, what this chapter is all about. So the first theme is, after winning a 3-way election focused on different theories of progressivism, Woodrow Wilson successfully pushed through a sweeping program of domestic, economic, and social reforms. So he pushed reforms on economic policy and reforms on social policy in the United States during his first term. Number 2, Wilson's attempt to promote an idealist progressive foreign policy failed. That failed. As dangerous military involvements threaten Latin America, the North Atlantic, and Europe. So during this chapter, we see a push towards imperialism, a push towards World War I. And what we learned about imperialism through our first days of this unit was imperialism means pushing our ideas onto other countries. Number 3, entering World War I in response of Germany's unrestricted submarine warfare. So we joined the war because of Germany's unrestricted submarine warfare. Remember that, guys. Wilson turned America's participation into a fervent ideological crusade for democracy. So basically what theme number 3 is saying, during World War I, America wanted to force our ideas onto others, aka imperialism, right? Successfully stirred the public to a voluntary war effort. So all of America was on board with this decision. But when it came time to pass these democratic ideas, Wilson's 14 League of Nations, all those failed. So, some will argue this crusade towards imperialism, this imperialistic idea of America, at least during World War I, kinda failed. It kinda blew up in our face after the war. So, let's discuss the chapter summary real quick. Number 1, Wilson and his new freedom defeated Roosevelt and his new nationalism. So these two people competed, but they formed two different types of progressivism. So if I would like to compare it, it's the same conflict is actually happening right now. It's Bernie Sanders and Joe Biden. They're two Democratic candidates, but their whole ideas are completely different from each other. The same thing is happening. I can draw a parallel to it between Wilson versus Roosevelt. Economic relief, tariff, finances, trust. That's their three things. Economic relief, remember that. But the social reforms under Wilson benefited the working class, but not the blacks. So, kinda racist, but it's the early 1900s to put it in perspective. Wilson attempt to implement progressive moral goals in foreign policy was less successful, like we said earlier in the video, as he stumbled into military involvements in the Caribbean and revolutionary Mexico. The outbreak of World War I also brought the threat of American involvement, especially on the German side, because of that unrestricted Germany warfare, submarine warfare. He avoided war with Germany, and his anti-war campaign of 1912 narrowly won him re-election over the arguing Republicans. So remember from the last chapter, we left where the Republicans were arguing about a bunch of different things that has not gotten resolved. So here is when we do get into World War I. The Zimmerman Note, proposing a Germany alliance with Mexico, finally caused the United States to declare war. And Wilson aroused the country to patriotic heights by making his war imperialistic, forcing our ideas of democracy towards others, and permanent peace based on his 14 points, which we know kinda failed. Wartime propaganda stirred voluntary commitment to the war effort. This also caused women to work more because the men were fighting in war, so women had to stay on the home front. Organizing industry, producing food, and financing the war. And this starts the beginnings of the Great migration, which we talk a little bit more in the next chapter. And this, the Great Migration, was blacks from the South migrated to the North that caused racial tension and riots. Okay. Americans didn't get into the war that much. They provided major contributions to the Allied victory, which is provide supplies, personnel, and generally improved morale. Okay. Wilson tried to rouse the country on behalf of his cherished League because his League of Nations failed, so Wilson tried to turn their perspective around. But his own physical collapse and refusal to compromise killed the treaty and the League. So we didn't compromise that much. We said, here's the League of Nations, sign it, we're not negotiating. So that kind of failed Wilson's attempts to build a League of Nations. The League of Nations had a similar ideas of the United Nations we have today, to put it in perspective for you guys, but less scale. But that was chapter 29, themes and summaries. I'm so glad I got to review that online for you guys. So reach out to me if you have any questions via this Google Classroom assignment. You have the textbook reading, but I only want you to read certain parts of the chapter reading. So please read that assignment very carefully. There's some parts I want you to not do. So see you guys in the next video next time I come back on here.